So, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Political No Brainer, the podcast where we move past winner takes all politics and into real conversation. Saul Spady is joining me today, a frequent guest, a friend of mine. I'm excited to chat with him. We were just chatting about stuff, exciting stuff, and even more exciting than some of the stuff we've talked about in the past. But Saul was just in San Francisco, just basically at the Super Bowl, like he said. How did you were just telling me about networking. You flew out to San
Yeah,
Francisco.
the
There's the Super
12-year
Bowl.
journey of how I got to Media Row right here in 2 minutes is if you listen to our past podcasts, I did a campaign called No Child Sleeps Outside, where I've raised a lot of money for family homelessness. Year two of that, I read an article about the kicker for the Seattle Seahawks, Stephen Hauschka at the time, Super Bowl winner, and it said he was the best ping pong player in the locker room there. And we'll get back to that later. This ping pong table broke down a lot of the barriers in the locker room. And so I just reached out to Hauschka and I asked if he'd do a celebrity ping pong tournament for Mary's Place. He said yes because he's an awesome, down to earth guy. We did two of them each year. The Seahawks went to the Super Bowl in 2013, 2014. And then I reconnected with Hauschka at a golf tournament about 3 months ago. And I was just like, yo, we got to bring the ping pong tournament back. We did. And he was letting me know he's going to be down at Media Row. And I said, hey, man, how about I come down and I be your publicist? And I take you around and get you interviews. And because what people wanted to talk to him about is a lot of people don't know this, but Stephen Hauschka was hired to be a coach for chemistry and team building for the Seahawks this last year. And so, some coaches have the offensive playbook, they have the defensive playbook. He was helping Coach Mike McDonald instill the team chemistry. Like, how do we make our team better as a group that's aligned? Like, how do we create the power of friendship? And it may be hokey, but they did win the Super Bowl, and
They
today
did
was the
win the Super
parade.
Bowl. Yeah.
And so maybe, good chemistry makes a difference.
I think good chemistry makes all the difference. I want to, when you said Mary's house, I got to focus in on that. Is
Mary's
that the
Place, Mary's
Mary's
Place.
place? That's the name of the place where kids are sleeping, are not sleeping outside, right?
Yeah, so Mary's Place, at peak, we had about 800 shelter beds and units for families. We're down to about 400 now. Now, part of that is, and it's something we've talked about on past podcasts, is it's a tool that a lot of cities use now that's more effective. Instead of putting somebody into shelter, you do diversion. Like, you'll pay their last rent check to keep them in their housing they're in. You get them into a new unit quicker. Because really, you're just trying to avoid what we kind of all know, which is, a night on the street compounds an amount of pain and lifetime issues. It's why we want to get foster kids into college and get them into housing, because if you get a foster kid homeless at 19, it might cost you $1 million to get them back at 29, right?
Or never, or honestly, I don't want to say this, but I'm going to say it. You may never turn them around. That life that just like you said, it compounds that loneliness, that misery, that feeling of despair. I mean, you're sleeping in the cold. I know. I was telling somebody the other day. I think it might have been on our podcast. I was just walking to my car the other day, 15, 20-minute walk, and I was freezing. I knew I was going to get to a warm car. I knew I was going to get to a warm home, but that 20 minutes was misery. How about people that are out there all night, and with no
I
hope
mean,
of even tomorrow being better?
and I'll lift it back, and you've heard this, and your listeners will hear it. And when I run for office, the people I'm trying to represent will see this. It's a constant journey for me watching addiction, trying to come up with solutions, talking with people like you, and getting out there. I mean, I was driving back from Media Row, so this is 8 hours, like passing Pat McAfee, trying to get Hauschka on Cam Newton's podcast, right? Like, Work in the Room, Westwood One, all the famous people. Like, Steve Irwin's kid was wandering around being famous, and we get back to the hotel, and I'd gotten a pretty cheap hotel. It had free parking, but it was kind of like a motel, right? It's one of those, like, kind of underneath the freeway motels that aren't considered that nice.
I've
And
stayed in plenty. Don't worry.
oh yeah, man, there was an addict passed out in front of the door with his foils. And like, on the way back, I was telling Hauschka that we'd made it so the kids weren't outside anymore. But he's like, "Oh, are there other problems?" I was like, "Oh man, addiction's crazy." He's like, "Oh, I don't see that in Newport Beach that much." And like, you don't, but like, it was just visceral. And I mean, I felt like I just won the Super Bowl myself. Like, I'd gotten to do Media Row as a broadcaster with somebody I'm a fan of who'd won the Super Bowl in the city I love. And like, man, I didn't even get 2 seconds to enjoy it. Like I had to go right back to sitting in my car looking at this addict and thinking about like this is why I do this podcast with you. I don't do it to talk about Auschka. I do it
No.
because I think we've failed the people on our streets. We've failed these foster kids. We've let the opioid addiction epidemic turn into an opium wars with China, and it's why, if there's anything, if I got to become a better coach, I got to figure out how it can't just be Saul calling out over this stuff. I have to find a way to build a team, uh, because you can't win this sport alone. That's impossible.
And that's been a theme we've been building on for we've done the podcast 3 times now. We've become friends. I was trying to get out to Fort Myers when you were out there, but it was kind of like, it was, but the idea is that we keep trying to say the problem is the opioids are coming from China or the opioids are coming from Mexico or the drugs. The problem isn't the supply as much as it is the demand. How do we reduce the demand? And that's the question you've been answering a lot of, or producing a lot of good solutions. And that's one of the reasons you're running for Congress, is because of those solutions. One of the things I've stayed laser focused on is the kids timing out of foster care. They turn 18, they're thrown to the wolves. How do we fix that? Like you said, and then you talked about conversion. These kids lose their home. They're 18, they lose their home. And a shelter is not the best place to stay. But like you said, if we just turn it into a conversion system where they're about to lose their apartment, but we get them into another apartment, or we pay their rent for that 1 month. How do we translate that into a real consistent policy?
So I think, and it's funny because I was just talking to my parents about this, and we talked about our last one. I think you need that specific policy just for foster kids, where foster kids get college education, they get an apartment, post zoning out, and then after that, 4 years, you can start to point to the data of how much success those kids have had, and then you kind of expand on that data because I do think we're kind of putting a band-aid on a wound, and it's tough because the solution for a foster kid that's become an addict to fentanyl who's 30 is different from the foster kid who's just aging out right now. Right? Those are actually two completely different problems. The person who's 30, who's an addict, who we failed, they need 6 months of rehab. They can't leave. That 18-year-old that's just about to get there, they need this different solution that prevents that. We need to then point to what was the cost of that 30-year-old that we lost, who's gotten who's OD'd 5 times. We brought them back, like all these different things. And like, not to have a big jump, but like everyone's seen this weird viral chart going on all of the fentanyl like deaths going down. And I've had some thoughts on this. I actually don't I think it's good, but I also don't think we're solving the problem. I think we just have more people ODing. Like I'd love to see the OD chart to go with the fentanyl death chart, because it might be that we just have enough Narcan out there that when somebody ODs, we can bring them back. But bringing them back doesn't mean we brought them back to reality. It's not like snap back to reality. It's like, oh, nope, it's all fentanyl. Like you're just
No,
right back to the
they're
street.
gonna
Do you get
hit
what
the
I mean?
streets again. They're gonna hit the streets
Yeah.
again, like you said. If they OD and you resuscitate them with Narcan, you haven't resolved the problem whatsoever. And then, like you said, the long term cost. This person from 18 to 30 for the last 12 years has had these needs, and it's costing taxpayers millions of dollars potentially each individual, versus I like to say Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency. If we looked at it in a way of efficiency, if we were more proactive, we could alleviate millions of dollars in cost for a different. Well, we took a different approach.
Well, and this is where Democrats have such a great argument for pre-K. They have such a great argument for universal lunch, right? There's these spaces where there's really good ROI on kind of socializing certain things. Now, you shouldn't socialize everything. Where Democrats have failed is it turns out you shouldn't build $1 million public housing apartment units and put an addict in it. That doesn't work. It's this classic. We got to take bits and pieces from everywhere and find a great solution. If I was going to give something that was really, and to like really narrow down on the conversation of like my solution, which is 3 strikes, you go to 6 months of rehab, and kind of my solution for Congress, which is ironically, I think Congress people need to go on what I'd call the world's worst field trip. So imagine I'm in US Congress. I'm going to bring AOC and Dan Crenshaw, and we're going to go to New Orleans with the local New Orleans congressperson, and we're going to walk the streets looking at addicts with local, health experts. And then at the end of the night, maybe we'll all sit in the hot tub together, safe space. Maybe somebody will smoke a joint. I don't know. Right. But like in that, but you kind of need to see the problem. You then need to sit in a hot tub in a safe space with no cameras around and talk about the problem. And like, it wasn't Congress people, but in Oakland, I brought up 3 strikes, you go to 6 months. And this guy goes, hey, it is white guy, but he had a lot of tattoos and he's pretty straightforward. He's like, I grew up in pretty low income circumstances. Everybody out there was selling. We were selling to make a living. Like, you got to solve the wealth crisis out there. You're just coming after the petty dealers. And I was like, well, man, I got to be honest with you. Petty dealers are different. This isn't your cocaine petty dealer. This isn't your weed petty dealer. We're talking about a fentanyl petty dealer. And even that person has bodies on their check mark. And if that person has dealt fent that has murdered somebody else, they probably need to go to jail for 2 years for manslaughter. And he kind of took that in, and he said maybe, but he also was really, he really wanted me to think about what I think I spend time thinking about a lot, which is, my homies moved pounds of weed when weed got legalized in Washington. I don't want any of them going to jail. Not one of them is a murderer. Not one of them is a bad dude. But if one of those dudes, and this would break my heart, but if one of those dudes dealt weed that had fent in it and a kid died, I, I think my buddy does have to go to jail a little bit to learn that, there are good dealers and bad dealers, man.
Well, you think about it in a sense, and you can say it's good dealers or bad dealers. You can also say the argument of pot, weed, was argued for for a whole generation until now we come to the realization it's not so bad. It's basically legal. We spent all that time and all that money arguing the point, incarcerating people, keeping it illegal, enforcing the fact that it was illegal, and now you've got a total reversal of policy. We also spent a generation of getting kids to stop smoking. I mean, smoking used to be cool, smoking cigarettes, and now we've got a lot of kids not smoking. We changed
Yeah, they
that.
all smoke those vapes, though. I don't
The
know if they should
vapes are
all.
bad,
We shouldn't
right?
be calling our victory over Edward R. Murrow, who's like, "Good night and good luck." A legend, literally smoking on TV while he fights the president. I don't know. Your radio person's immediately hitting their vape after they walk off air.
They do, absolutely, and that is a bad. People are trying to tell kids, especially, that's a bad alternative because it's not good for your body. It's not. But the other thing too
Living
is like
kills you. It's pretty funny.
it absolutely does. Now what we were just talking about was really interesting to me because like you said, we don't Democrats have taken everything to the next extreme. We don't need to build millions of dollars in buildings and housing projects. The one thing I was talking to somebody about is churches are the most unutilized essentially buildings in the country. And if we had, just like you said, a place where kids could go get a hot meal on a real plate, on real glassware, with real silverware, if kids can learn more about successful living, outside of school, over and above school. One of the things I'm watching this new guy on YouTube. He's interviewing all the billionaires, and he's this good-looking kid. He's this fun kid to watch. He's saying, "How did you succeed?" And they're all saying, "I failed at first, but I kept going." If we can instill in kids how to succeed by keeping going, by not going down the wrong roads, we would make a big difference.
Well, this is the Sam Darnold versus Russell Wilson conundrum that I'll give you. So, right now, if you don't know these two names, Russell Wilson is the last Super Bowl winning quarterback in Seattle. He was a rookie QB. He won a Super Bowl his second year, divorced his wife, married Sierra, like, did all this stuff. Like, Mr. Unlimited was his nickname. He's told people he had no time for sleep, which is, if you think about it, pretty stupid if you're an athlete, because sleep is how you perform. Maybe if you slept enough, you would have been like, oh, we should hand it to Marshawn. Sam Darnold, anointed number 3 pick. What has he done? Failed. What did he do after that? Failed some more. What did they say about him? What a failure label. They just, boom, put it right on his face. What did he do? He learned. He grew. Every time somebody said he failed, he said, that situation wasn't right and I took something away. Then he went and he was the backup to Brock Purdy. Then he was going to be the backup to J.J. McCarthy. And what happened? McCarthy hurt his leg. And what did he do? He won 14 games. Then Vikings said, nah, you know what? It's hard to say. Sammy D, Sam Darnold, he's got that failure label. Maybe he just got lucky with our good defense. Where did he go? Seattle. What did he do? He became the first quarterback since Tom Brady to win 14 games back to back years. The first in the history of the NFL to do it with two different teams. And the entire time, he actually faced every single team that he had left on the way to the Super Bowl. And you know, what did he do? He didn't shit on any of them. All he did was talk about what he learned, that experience, how to get better. If you want the weird, and people don't love Nixon, but like Nixon lost to RFK, or no, not RFK, JFK. Nixon lost to JFK and Kennedy. And Kennedy beat him at the debates because they were televised, and Nixon looked like a schlob, and he spoke better. Anyone on the radio thought Nixon had won, but anyone on TV knew that Kennedy won. And then what did Nixon become? A master at television. He took his loss, he went back, he trained, and he grew. I mean, if you want to see something crazy, I mean, that's Trump. That's why Trump feels so mad. He had 4 years to really think about how pissed he was that he lost.
I mean, really, he did. And it's so funny when you say Trump because this is the other day I was having this whole I got to do this presentation soon, and I said I want to see something. I was looking for something on YouTube Obama said, and what it was I was looking for is like, if he, when he was leaving his exit interview after 8 years as president, he said, if you don't like the way things are going, grab a clipboard, run for office. And so I did, right? And then I realized whenever I talked to somebody about running for office, it was all about how much money do you have, how much money have you raised, and I'm like, I can't consciously take. I have a friend that keeps offering me $5,000 that he has in his savings to start my next campaign. I'm like, I can't take your $5,000. You still want to go to Scotland? Go to Scotland with that $5,000. That's what you've been dying to do your whole life. And then so raising money was never my thing. So I started a podcast to raise awareness. So in a sense, I transitioned. That was my big failure, running for office. I wasn't the candidate. I wasn't the political guy I wanted to be. But so now I run a podcast. So my message and my mission has always been, and especially the more I do this podcast, the more people I talk to. I think churches not necessarily have to convey their religious message, but could spend more time conveying a mentoring message about how to successfully live and find inner peace and avoid things like opium addiction and avoid things like that. Teach our kids how to spend their time more productively, how to buy a home, how to just rent a home, how to just own a car, how to make it to work, commit to something, stick to something. And I just think we need to do a better job of that.
You know, my grandfather gave a lot back to Seattle, and Seattle, he also created a church. So for what the, he would be like, I made a church too. But like Seattle in many ways was his church, and where he tithed and where he gave back his time. And he's a legend in this city. I've done something very similar. I was just in Oakland, and I mean, I love Marshawn Lynch. I was at Marshawn Lynch's like dive bar in Oakland, and I mean, his aunts are working behind the dive. It is not the fanciest place, but then one of the women who was there when we were watching the Super Bowl, she told me that like her daughter had died, and Marshawn was friends with her and came after he was famous and gave the eulogy. And she was like, he doesn't have to do that, but he did because he's part of that community and that's where he's from. And he's he's a church in his own way. The Church of Marshawn Lynch is real, and I noticed it at the Super Bowl. There were a lot of Seahawks fans at his bar, but 70% of the bar were Marshawn fans. They were there because of what he's done in the community, because of what he's given back, because we know the pain of what happened when he wasn't given the damn ball. And we were all there, myself included, to pray at the Church of Marshawn and celebrate one of the hardest working, best community guys in America. And if we had a lot more Marshawn Lynches, I think America would be a much better place.
Well, not just a lot more Marshawn Lynch, just a lot more Saul Spady's, a lot more Coach Trippies or Jeff Rabinowitz. I mean, we're so we're into this. This is our thing. This is our church. When we have these conversations, we get this word out that there's a better way forward. Even though we haven't answered all the questions, there's definitely a better way forward. It doesn't have to be that you're either red or blue in America. I interviewed a guy, he wrote a book, I think it was Good Politics, and he talked about starting one movement. Don't necessarily run for office, just start one movement that you believe in. And that was my next really question for you was when you started No Child Sleeps Outside, how did you do it? Because I am still headstrong on the idea of building a small community next to a community college where kids timing out of foster care get apartments, go to college, and they have like dorm parents like at Hershey's school for
So
underprivileged.
I just did it. The best way to describe it is that I knew that there was a problem, and then I took what was my family's change. So Dick's Drive-ins collected $10,000 worth of change a month. I then challenged about 30 businesses to match that change. Five of them said yes. That was the moment we had a gala. At that moment, I call this I dreams to reality. I had a dream of creating a crowd fund, but the moment that those five businesses said, yes, Saul, we will invest 10,000, we'll match Dick's Drive-ins, that gave me my budget. And at that moment, I feel like we weren't just dreaming of building a house anymore. We were building a house, right? We were starting to lay down the first two by fours. Now you need a campaign, right? So I had the money, but I had to have a plan. This goes to like, we can just tell the boys to play football, but it is better if we create a playbook and we practice it and
And we
we
have a
we
coach.
work it all out. We have a coach that does make it easier. So it's not just going to work. You might get to the Saul, I gathered 50,000, and then if you don't follow the strategy that I say next, you might not succeed. So then from there, I will fully admit 25,000 of that went to my agency to run this, and I had to pay. And a lot of people struggle with me making money, but like Grandpa Dick always said, number one, you got to make a profit. Number two, you give back to your community. So the other 25,000, this is where if you don't have to pay yourself, maybe you only have to raise 25,000. That 25,000 was spent all on Facebook ads. So that is 2.5 million impressions. And at some point, we should do a podcast on how Trump won with Facebook in 2016, because he actually followed a lot of the strategy I'm saying here. We can dislike him. We can say we don't like the guy, but this strategy that I'm about to say, if it worked for Trump to win president and it worked for Saul to raise $5 million of family homelessness, maybe it's a decent strategy. So that 25,000 is 2.5 million impressions. I targeted it to the 250,000 people that were wealthy in the top 1% of wealth and gave back to charity. So our belief is that those people in politics, we call them likely voters. In this area, we're going to call them likely donors, right? They're more engaged, they're more likely to donate. So now our 2.5 million impressions is going to 250,000 people. So now we're taking a boulder of 2.5 million, and instead of throwing it into 10 million people, which is the Hillary Facebook strategy, where it doesn't make a ripple, we actually take that 2.5 million and we throw it into a pond of 250,000, so it makes 10 ripples. That's Trump's strategy. He targeted the Rust Belt really heavily in 2016 with his 60 million in ads, specifically swing voters, and so they got frequencies of upwards of 80. My frequency here was 10. And over 45 days, we asked them to give back with a goal, right? Your case, Coach Trippy, maybe you get 10 companies to give you 5,000 each. Then you run a campaign to the businesses that are within 5 miles, or the people that are within 5 miles of the community college you're going to partner with. And you make a commitment that when we raise $500,000, we're going to buy a fucking home. We're just going to buy a home. And every year you're going to take applications and you're going to put 4 foster kids in there. And you're going to get a community college to donate the
The
tuition.
tuition.
And we're gonna just do a beta, an alpha of our plan. We're gonna just make the Trippy house and
Right.
make it work. And after 2 years of having a couple of classes go through, maybe you've raised enough money that you have 4 houses next to each other. You're gonna take these 20 kids down to where's the capital in Florida? I have no idea.
Tallahassee.
Yeah, we're gonna take our kids down to Tallahassee and our supporters, and we're gonna have them all testify to to the state house about like what it has done for them, this little micro program. And you're going to say, hey, you just heard them. This is what we've done on the back of this idea. And I'm just asking you to just put in 10 million. Let us make this, let's do it for 500 foster kids a year. But like, I think we need to get better at just getting that. I didn't try to end family homelessness. The dream was to end family homelessness. But what we tried to do was to create the team of people that were willing to dream the dream. And to do that, they had to make one shelter. Our very first campaign was to open one temporary shelter. We raised $500,000. Our second campaign opened up a much bigger permanent shelter. We raised $1 million. And our third campaign was where it kind of went through the roof, and we got that $5 million from Starbucks, and Amazon started to come in. But like, if we had tried to get Starbucks in year one, I don't think we'd be sitting here talking about that. The first movement I made. The irony is, and I think this goes into like Hauschka felt like he was on the best team of his life with that 2013 team. Then he went and he studied team working and team building, went back to his old team 12 years later and taught them how to be a great team. I have thought really deeply about how to build movements. And like, not only did I do No Child Sleeps Outside, I've helped create a movement of Rotarian malaria partners with a group to make Rotarians ending Rotary, sorry, ending not Rotary, ending malaria their next big quest. And my most recent one is I helped make a movement to save a botanic garden in Little Haiti, Miami. And if you notice anything, I'm just somebody who has a playbook, right? Like if there's anything out there, Hauschka thinks he has a playbook to make a better team. Maybe he's wrong. Maybe he's full of shit. I don't know. I think he's right. They just won the Super
They just
Bowl.
won the Super
I
Bowl.
have a I have a playbook to create movements, and I'm three deep. I mean, it's why I think everyone should watch my run for U.S. Congress with so much interest, because either I'm gonna flat fall on my face, or like I really laugh. I might win.
Well, I'm watching your run for Congress, and I'm extremely enthusiastic about you either winning this time or setting up for success the next run, because
To
it's like
learn
you
how to be
said.
great again.
Right, right. Because it may not happen on. There's some really good politicians out there, and they raise a lot of money, and just like you said, they know a lot, so it's hard to beat them. Then we get these whole where like Katie Wilson beat an incumbent, and Andrew Ocasio Cortez came out of nowhere and beat literally even got the nomination of the party. Not the incumbent didn't even get the nomination of the party, which is extremely unusual. And
Very rare.
we see these one-offs, but I'm always trying to. I love that book that he wrote about good politics, where it we don't. I mean, for Saul Spady, run for office and run again and win, for God's sakes. But for me, running for office at 60 years old is no longer my thing. But I want to create that movement. And what you just said is incredible to me. That we got to get started somewhere. We also have to have the infrastructure that when we finally do get the money, we're ready to get started. So it's
And learn from
involved.
people, young and old. Study how Trump won. Study how Biden beat Trump, because there were lessons there. Read, and this is one of my favorites, Saul Zelinsky's Rules for Radicals. Even if you're not a radical, understand how radicals think. Radicals are
Right.
always getting crazy shit done.
They are.
Figure it out. And like, who totally doesn't agree with Saul Zelinsky at all, but totally read his book on radicals is Trump. Do you get what I mean? I see him utilize the radical playbook all the time.
Well, you know what's more radical about Trump than anything else is the fact that he just does things that are like he's not your normal politician. He doesn't when politicians make a campaign promise and then they get elected to office, the minute they get elected to office, people are like, you can't keep that promise. With Trump, he says, I'm keeping it. I don't care how radical it is. I don't care how unrealistic it is. I don't care how much shit it'll shake up. I'm
And
keeping that promise.
his biggest mistake that he has experienced, I think, on this cycle that almost 90% of people who are regular can agree on, was he literally ran on releasing the Epstein list, and then for a couple months was like, whoa, hey, whoa, I'm not gonna do that thing I said I was gonna do. And that's where his
That's where
ratings
his
really started to
demise
go
is
down
coming. Yeah.
100%, because his base kind of has an expectation he does what he says, and now he's kind of caught on that, right? You become accountable to the situations you create, and it's interesting that that's going to be what I think slowly takes him down, but it's slow.
It very much will take him down. Well, he's also, I mean, in time, he's going to go down just because he can't run for office again. He's really getting older. I mean, I don't know how his health is, but he's not going to stay, able to. But the fact of the matter is, it's just like you said, when you think of his decline, it has to do with the broken promise. So he is the guy. Generally, politicians have about a 5% average of keeping their promises. They keep about 5% of their promises. Trump's a lot higher than that. He's kept a lot more than 5%. But this time, the whole Epstein thing. I mean, I think he would have been better off just releasing him and found guilty of what he's being accused of, because the fact of the matter is there is no reason to believe for 1 minute he's not. Where there's smoke, there's fire. He if he would have just released the files and so like everything else, yep, I did it. I
My
think he'd have
favorite
been.
line: Donald Trump is mentioned more in the Epstein files than Harry Potter is mentioned in Harry Potter. He's mentioned more in the Epstein files than Jesus is mentioned in the New Testament.
I mean, there is good reason to believe that he would have been better off just releasing the Epstein files in whole, just telling Pam Bondi, do what you said you're going to do, and take the responsibility from there, because that would have been very Trumpish. Let Trump be Trump. But he decided this one time, I can't do it for whatever reason. Maybe it is that heinous, which I'm sure it is, but he didn't do it this one time, and it really is where his credibility lost a lot of that gravitas that Trump gravitas that he
Man,
had.
if you went to the island or you partied with Diddy, I'm not saying you're guilty, but you probably have some character quirks
Extreme
that
character quirks,
that
extreme.
put you in danger. And it's tough because this is such a 90s statement, and people say this all the time, right? Except this is why we're not in the 90s. Like, if it was the 90s, people would be like, well, that Saul Spady, he does mushrooms. And like now in the 21st century, we're like, I'm with you. And I'm like, yeah, man, I've totally microdosed mushrooms before. Mushrooms are an interesting thing. They help people with PTSD. We should be researching it. We should be talking about it. I shouldn't be doing mushrooms when I'm in US Congress, but I have no shame that I've done mushrooms in my life. Whereas like 90s rules, things were so bad, you didn't want to admit you went to a Diddy party. Do you get what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you couldn't be above board. You don't want to be like, well, I was at a Diddy party. Things were pretty crazy. I wasn't there actually. I've thought about it. My publicist said I wasn't there.
Well, that's like Bill Clinton. Yeah, I smoked, but I didn't inhale. It was just as silly as it could be. Just yeah, I smoked pot. I mean, now
Hey,
20,
Nancy
30 years.
Pelosi, I'm not the world's best stock trader. Well, then why do you trade better than Warren Buffett?
And it's so funny because she averages higher than Warren Buffett. That's true, right? So it's insider trading. So why wouldn't she just come out at the age of 80 and say, "Yeah, there was some insider information. I was legal at the time," or
Because she went to a Diddy party of her own making. Do you kind of get what I
right?
mean? She can't admit
Yes,
that she attended a
yes,
Diddy party of insider trading. People who went to Diddy parties can't admit they went to Diddy parties. Trump
right.
can't admit that he actually, and it's
Which
kind of
is the
like
reason for
everyone knew
his.
Epstein was doing this dirty shit. And it's like, well, yeah, I get it. I mean, maybe my version, like I've heard it for like before I right before I got into gaming, like, and I was doing some gaming events, people told me like, well, you had to really see some gaming parties because like illegal shit went down there. And I was like, well, maybe it's good that we're just like pouring champagne. Like, you got to get what I mean. Like when they described what was going down, I was like, oh, that's not the party for me. I don't think
Right.
I would have wanted to attend that party. That sounded bad.
I mean, honestly, the whole. I think Trump would have been better off if he would have just told Pam Bondi, "Do it, what you said you're gonna do. Just release it." But to just keep redacting stuff and keeps postponing and keep making excuses is just been detrimental to his Trump being Trump theme.
Yeah, I mean, my final one, and I've said this on your podcast before. Um, it's 4 seasons, a year of the President Apprentice Edition. He's keeping the zone flooded to get to each finale. Each finale always kind of deals with some Epstein stuff. And to your point, if he just released it maybe it wouldn't be leaking out the way it is, but every season of The Apprentice President Edition, there's enough Epstein trickle that maybe it would have been better to just let it be a deluge. Uh,
No one's even believing that the Epstein trickle's all false. No one, everybody knows what's
oh,
trickling out is true. And so to try and control the information is just pointless.
I mean,
I mean,
man, it's the '90s are bad. If you want my version of it, I mean, we can go back to ancient Rome. You can read about politicians taking advantage of young boys who then become leaders. Like Caesar, literally, it's written that he was taken advantage of. I'm not saying this is good. I'm saying all of this is bad. Like for literally eons, police have been murdering black kids. We're just finally watching it on video for the first time because we all have this thing that's connecting us right now. We can pull out our camera and engage and tell a story, but it also means humanity is struggling with what is a very real thing, which is humanity's for thousands of years, humanity has had haves and have nots. And the haves have been so powerful that they can enslave, abuse, hurt, mistreat the have nots and never be held accountable. And we are starting to hit that tidal point between these groups. And I mean, the haves are accountable to the point that, you know, I share that I do mushrooms because I don't want to be caught not telling the truth. That's how
I don't think it's an
powerful.
issue. I don't think it'll change. I don't think it changes your ability to run for Congress and be a successful congressman. Here's
But
the
I think
thing:
it
when you
would have
think,
if I was anti-mushroom and I tried to create like some sort of group of people that threw people who did mushrooms in jail and all my friends that I've done mushrooms with. Do you get what I mean? That would have been
yeah.
the
Well, there
hypocrisy.
was a senator. There was a senator that was anti-gay and all about gay conversion therapy. And then he was in an airport and he was soliciting a man next to him in the stall. And he said, I guess the way they initially charged him was his foot was under the stall. And they said, that's a signal for the man next to you. And he said, I'm a tall man. And they said, yeah, but you did 10 other things. You waved your business card under the wall, and that's how we knew you were a senator is because our officer who was at the stall next door took a picture of your business card. And then you pleaded guilty in the mail. And then everybody's like, hey, look at this evidence. This card says he's a U.S. senator and everything. But to that point, when you talk about video, I think I've made this point with you is I've made it on the podcast numerous times. The reason the Vietnam War was so unpopular is because it was the first time war was televised. And then it became war was popular before then. World War II is a very portrayed as a very systematic thing where because there was no video of it. But when in Vietnam, when you saw a napalm wiping out villages, then suddenly war became unpopular. Then Rodney King suddenly these cameras, some people had cameras on their phone or cameras available to film. Now everybody has a camera. So you're in a different world today. You're in a different world of publicity and social media today. So a lot of things are very, very apparent. Very, very
Well, and
there.
there's good and bads to that. The good is that everyone is on camera, and so like you can get caught being a murderer, right?
Right.
That's good. The bad is everyone is on camera, so now your politicians aren't authentic at all, right? They're so afraid of being caught, being said, oh, you didn't do this or that. It's why Nancy Pelosi's afraid of admitting that she's actually a good stock trader. It's more important to keep the lie alive that her Diddy party wasn't a Diddy party, right?
And it
And
very
that's
much
why
was.
and it's we all have these things and I think it's where, I have my most I have fear. I have legitimate fear that I'm such an authentic person. I'm not as shiny as Mom Donnie, right? I'm not as perfect as some of these people, and I think that's good, but I also think it's really dangerous and it's hard. It's why like I was telling somebody else about my podcast with you, I always leave a nugget for the person who's sent to read all of these podcasts and listen and learn about like what a bad person Saul is because he's been authentic. Like I hope you gained something from this podcast. I hope you grew, whoever you're listening. I hope you got the nugget that helps your opponent get me. And like i'm I am who I am, and I'm saying it right now because I know this is recorded and live on air, and one day my words can come back to me. I'm not afraid of my words, even if they're wrong. and I'm ready to grow from my words and become a better person. And I hope we're hitting a new era because we do need something new.
Well, there are no perfect people. There are no
Yeah,
perfect people. So, and in politics, I don't think there are any. I think they'll, and I have never liked Trump's policies, but the fact of the matter is, when he said he was going to do something, he did it. I always use the example of the Department of Education. Ronald Reagan said he's going to close the Department of Education, and over his 8 years, it grew in size and it grew in scope. And he didn't close it ultimately. He never closed it. It grew bigger. It grew profoundly bigger over his 8 years, and then over the course of time, it grew even bigger. Donald Trump said he's going to close it. Essentially, he closed it. I don't think we got a congressional approval of it, but I don't think there's anybody in the building anymore. So he did close it. So he said he's going to do it. He did it. I don't like his politics. I don't like his policies. But the truth is, at least he does says what he's going to do. And that's Saul Spady. I made mistakes, or maybe I'll still make them. I'll still live the life I live. You're still going to be a good congressman. You've got a lot of things working for you that'll make you an effective congressman, like an open mind.
I'll go back to the hot tub and a black couple from Oakland, a guy who I can't remember where he's from, but he said he's from a poor community, white guy. I'm Saul Spady, the Duke of Dix. We're all in the Emeryville, Oakland hot tub after the Super Bowl, and all I could say, because he was like, if you do that 3 strikes to 6 months, just know you're taking people off the street who might not deserve it. And he's like, if you take those dealers, you also need to get across and get the people who are moving the fentanyl and heavyweight. And I was like, I completely agree. But really, the main thing I want him to know is I'm not sure what I'm gonna do will solve it. I know what we're doing isn't working. I know we have to try new things. And then from there, we have to iterate. We have to have the strength of character to enter the arena, to attempt what we believe. And then, really, this is the hardest thing. This is the mark of a true leader. If you fuck up and your solution was bad, well, you got a 3 year run. Come up with something new, and
Well,
like keep the ball rolling, baby.
that's what just swing the bat. That's like Jeff Bezos says about Amazon. If we're not losing money, if we're not swinging the bat hard enough. We're not making mistakes. We're not swinging the bat hard enough. We're not doing enough. We've got to try new things. I know I think it's Missouri or Mississippi, they started a public education Montessori system. And it's really made their school system better. I think they've gone from 30th to third in the nation. It's swinging the bat real hard. I would love to see that in every state because Montessori is for really could make a big difference in a lot of kids' lives. And it's a great approach to education. There's a lot of kids that go through a structured K through 12 system like we have only available and don't and just lost and then badgered for being lost. Whereas if they were they're creative, they need an open field, they need an outside school, they need to be in the air, and Montessori works for them, let it work. We need to start rethinking. We need to start, like you said, making big mistakes and making big gains in the process.
All of us are more likely to be Sam Darnold than we are to be Russell Wilson. And honestly, we should reset and realize it's cooler to be Sam Darnold than it is to be Russell Wilson. To be anointed, to win early, and then to have your team kind of dissolve because you couldn't get out of your own way because you were bigger than the team, which is really what happened. Russell Wilson made them choose between the Legion of Boom and him, and like lo and behold, no one won. I be Sam Darnold, enjoy your failure, honor. It's where I struggle the most. I'll say it. Like I saw my parents tonight at the Super Bowl parade, and I have frustration with them about how me and my sibling and how we it all kind of came out in our family business, and she runs the family business. I'm not involved at all. She's in many ways the Russell Wilson, which I'm not trying to take away from her. She's a Super Bowl champion. She's a stud. She's still in the league. She's she's a really talented person. But like you also have to find a way to honor those who've taken longer journeys and who aren't as quick and who failure fueled them. And you might look up and it'll shock everybody. But Sam Darnold is far more likely to have 2 Super Bowls than Russell Wilson at this point. And and you know, failure's pretty cool.
Well, imagine if your parents did bring you back into business and let you partner with your sister,
They
and
never will.
they
There's
never
no
will.
place
Right,
for
right.
that.
But just saying. I know you know better than anybody. I don't have an opinion on the top. But you said they never will. They never will. But imagine if they did, and the success that it could be because of the two of you with an open mind, comparing notes and comparing strategies, and maybe really working out some strategies together.
Yeah, no, and I mean, for what it's worth, that was us when we were both there. That's why I go back to, if my sister and I's takeaway and my metaphor to deal with us is that she was Russell Wilson and I'm the Legion of Boom and we won a Super Bowl. And then because we couldn't totally figure it out, we didn't win the next Super Bowl. Outside of the Tom Brady team and the Mahomes teams, like that's the greatest dynasty that's been in the league the last 20 years. I know it didn't fully coalesce, but when my sister and I played together and we ran Dick's together, it was probably the most popular fast food joint in an indie category in the entire country. Now it's just the most popular fast food joint in Seattle, and that's okay. She
But that's
like
what I'm saying. It could be national if the two of you are together. It could
Yeah, but she
be
doesn't want that. My family doesn't want that. And that's why I go back to Russell Wilson didn't want to be on a team where he wasn't the star. And that's again, that's okay. We point to different one. Joe Biden didn't want to step down and let anybody replace him. He wanted to just be a straight handoff to Harris. Really, he just wanted to run all the way. And then he realized it was a straight handoff. But that mistake of not letting us hand it to the Marchand was about as bad as not stepping down. Joe Biden
he's
needed to not run for president
no,
again a
that was
second
an
time.
awful miscalculation. Awful,
Took the
awful.
Seahawks 12 years to get back into the big game. Now, the question for the Democrats is how do they adapt? Are they only out of the big game for 4 years? Are they out for eight? Right? Because that's how tough president is. President's like the Olympics. You get 2 years to think about it and then 2 years to run your new playbook. And if you fail again, you're out of the game for eight
For
years.
that's my concern is I do think that they're going to get the keys back to the family car, but I think they're going to run it in a ditch again because they just have this conviction that they're going to grow. They have this conviction now that they see what Donald Trump did. He made the New Deal the screw deal. So they're not only going to bring back the New Deal, they're going to bring it back bigger, bigger, bigger. They're going to move the progressive movement to entirely too much. Americans don't want a handout. They just need a hand up. They need help. They want to succeed. They want to prevail in this economy. This is a strong economy. We do have billionaires that understand how to play the game. We need more people that understand how to play the game and become millionaires. Mark
We
Cuban
need
says this.
intergenerational wealth to become cool again, not just for rich people, but for mom and pops. We want people to be able to buy a home for the first time in their life, have kids, send their kids to college, and then be able to give that home to their kids versus having to liquidate it to pay off an estate tax.
Right,
Right?
right. We
Like
need to
the
reverse
dream's
all
not
that.
alive. The
No,
dream's
it's
not
not.
alive anymore. And Democrats need to bring that dream back because it's not America first, it's America focused, you know?
So I remember, like I said, when I had this epiphany about when I was looking for what Obama said on the YouTube about if you don't like the way things are going, grab a clipboard, run for office. The other thing that he said was he was talking about his accomplishments over 8 years, and I remember him saying, if I'd have told you 8 years ago we were going to create 1.7 million jobs, and you wouldn't have believed it. The problem was the 1.7 million jobs he created weren't the greatest jobs. I had a job his entire administration. A lot of them were difficult, a lot of them were low paying. Yes, I had a job, but I was working two and three jobs to accomplish some things like buy a home. We've got to get back to a place where people can have a nice life and earn a living still.
If there's something, this is really heavy, but it's probably one of my favorite conversations I had last year. And it was when I was in Toronto watching the Mariners play the Blue Jays to go to the World Series. And this guy from India was driving me around, and he was a little heavier set, but not a lot. But he was complaining to me. He's like, "Yo, man, back in India, I was able to work, and then I'd get off and I'd work out, and I play and I do sport all the time. He's like, out here, I get off my job and then I get in this Uber, and now I'm driving the Uber so that my wife and I can have a kid. And he's like, when I have that kid, I'm gonna have to get another job. And it just was, and it was just like this kind of statement of like, man. And he really was like, I think it was better in India, right? That was a really like he was pretty, and I think
It's how it
America needs to
was.
start listening to people saying shit like that, and it might be better in India. And that means we're not competing as well. And yeah, we have things that make us great, but we also have things that are really ruining our quality of life. And that's why, like, I tell everybody, if you vibe with what I say, it's the Quality of Life Coalition. I'm running as a Democrat, but really it's about a set of issues that really I think will help lower the cost of living, get the addicts off the street, and create the opportunity for all of us to have intergenerational wealth again. I bet you if I make a lot of progress, Republicans will become my type of Democrat. That's a good
I
that's a good
I
message.
it is a great message because the truth is, it's like I call it government efficiency. I mean, if you can spend $20,000 a year on a kid instead of $1 million on an adult imprisoning him, I mean, the $20,000 a year, and you make this kid a productive human being in 4 years, you're out $80,000. But if you don't do anything to make this kid productive, not necessarily give him a free apartment, not necessarily give him some food stamps to eat 1 meal a day, not necessarily give him a job that'll make him minimum wage, but to really make him productive, to really make him enable him to succeed in America's economy. Yeah, you're going to spend that 80 grand on him for giving him a place to live, an education, a dorm parent, but you're not going to spend the millions of dollars it's going to cost to incarcerate him for crimes he committed and the heinous effects those crimes had on people. You're going to mitigate all that. And I like to call that a sense of government efficiency. Is, let's weigh those options. Let's consider those options. We took so long to say, you know what, pot's not so bad. Let's just legalize it. For 50 years, we've been waging a war. I remember New York City one time was arresting everybody on the street smoking pot. They were bringing them in public city buses into the police stations. They were processing them in the parking lots, and they were all given summonses to appear in court and pay fines. It was like this big giant sting operation. And now you look back 20 years later and you're like, it's no problem. We spent we need to get more aggressive and new approaches. We need to swing the bat harder. We need to understand that the old systems aren't working.
I'll leave you with this, and I think I mentioned it to you before. I don't really believe in trickle down economics anymore because there's companies with 500 billion in cash,
In cash.
and it's not moving anywhere. But Democrats or New Age Republicans or America First or America Focused, right? All these stupid words. I think we need to figure out how to create trickle down investment using our government dollars. And there's certain spaces like universal pre-K, like free lunch for kids, like this foster program that you and I keep on going back and forth on. I think that's where if I was going to come up with a cash tax, it'd be really fun to use it to fund all of this trickle down positiveness for society. So if a corporation can't get its way to using its 500 billion in cash, I think it should be taxed 2%. And that's how we pay for our foster kid stuff. Like, and that's where I bring back our last podcast. We talked about using the Venezuela money to pay for healthcare. And
Right.
like, let's get fun again, man. Politics is freaking fun, man. Let's have fun with all of how we like no one's even thinking or coming up with stuff anymore. Like as my mom said today, she's like, they're not even filing bills in U.S. House anymore, and there should be performative bill filing.
They're not even doing that anymore. And to add two more things to that wish list you just said, public education Montessori system. Every state should have public education Montessori schools. And the other thing, a prepaid college. Let kids earn money towards college by doing life courses online. Let them understand life by going online and learning about investing, learning about taxes and insurance, and learning about healthy living, and let them earn money towards college and make it a national prepaid system. Some kids have parents that aren't going to pay for their college. They're telling them, "I don't even have the money to pay for this house. Forget about saving for your college." Let kids, rather than Biden saying, "I'm just going to waive off all the debt, all the school debt." Well, they've all gone to school. So you're not doing anything for the future. And then you got shot down anyway. So really all you were trying to do is buy some votes and it didn't even work. Let's try another approach, create a national prepaid college system that can be earned like Florida's has a bright futures where if you do good in school you get a reduction in costs.
We're always, and this goes back to and we just have to realize it. There's two different problems we're solving, right? One, we want to help the kids that are about to enter college not have debt. So, how do we solve that? How do we help them there? Now we have this other group of people that have massive debt and we don't know how to totally fix it. How do we help them mitigate it or like get them a set like 2% plan or like it's just different solutions is all. And I'm not saying I have the answer if somebody really comes at me for like not knowing how to solve student debt. I think all I'm trying to say is the solution to help kids go to college more affordably is different than the solution to help you get out of your overwhelming college debt.
But that's two different things. And like you said, the House and the Senate aren't even doing anything. They're not producing any bills to mitigate these problems. They're doing nothing. And then they're cutting off for 6 and 12 weeks recess for Christmas and Easter and every other holiday. And then and we're
And a government shutdown a couple times a year
a
now. That's our
government
new holiday.
shutdown again
Yeah,
for
like why not?
45 days.
Who doesn't love not knowing where your paycheck's going to come from, right? They actually write about it in the Bible. Like, don't do work for a man who won't pay you. There's like a whole section of the Bible about it. And then people out here just like referencing Jesus all the time where they're not paying the citizens.
Well, I mean, it's just crazy. 45. And the thing that pissed me off most of all is Democrats were told just give the president the CR, the continued resolution. No, we can't do that. But the minute affluent business people got stuck at the airport, Democrats folded. I mean, so everybody that wasn't getting paid, just like you said, every air traffic controller that wasn't getting paid but was told they had to report to work, every government worker that wasn't getting paid, that was okay with the lawmakers. Go home without a paycheck this week. Go home without a paycheck next week. They went home with a paycheck. But the minute business people got stuck at the airport, Democrats got their shit together and said, "Okay, we'll work out the increased subsidies for Obamacare down the road." Okay, so you just bullshitted the entire country into believing you were standing on something you really believed in. But the minute your voters, your real donors, said, "The hell with this," you bailed, you jumped ship with them.
And I don't mean this in a rude way. Like I live in this world where I was at the Super Bowl in Media Row. I was just at a private club with my parents watching, the parade. I but then on the other side, I come back to an addict at my hotel. Have seen a lot out there and I'm not sure those who are extremely wealthy, and this is tough because so many people from US Congress have come from tough backgrounds. Like, I'm not trying to take away. So many of those people have come from really humble beginnings. That's what makes America so great. Like, Pramila Jayapal, who I want to run against, has come from some of the most humble beginnings. But if you rise out of those humble beginnings and then you forget what it's like to live month to month, and if you can't remember fully I think that's what's creating the trauma and the tension between all of these elected people. Throw away Republican and Democrat, just elected people and unelected people. I feel like electeds have forgotten what it's like to live month to month.
Well, and obviously, looking at you wearing that beautiful Super Bowl attire, we all know you're not starving. We all know you're okay. And thank God for that. But I think you really are you've got your hand close to the lever, understanding what it is to have it tough. I
Well,
think
I
you
mean,
do. There's
you
no,
know, it's my
I'm,
partner threw me. I'm not living in an apartment right now, but I'm living in like different Airbnbs. By living in different Airbnbs, I've learned a lot about how it's hard to get an apartment. And like you learn things when you go through trauma or you go through even tough moments. And again, I'm lucky enough. I can get those Airbnbs. I can get those moments. I've only had to sleep in my car a couple times in my life, and that was like a decade ago. But do I never forget it though? Do you get what I mean? Those moments, I think, and it feels weird saying this. I think it's easy to forget your humble beginnings once you enter the hollowed halls of Congress, and it'll be probably my biggest battle to to
I
stay
don't think it'll
humble once
happen.
I
I
get
think you'll
there.
stay humble. I think you will. That's why I'm completely convinced that you're the guy for the job, and I hope you win. Or if you don't win it, I hope you run again because it's like you said. Sometimes failure can be the key to success. But not only that, it doesn't. I've never had to sleep in my car, but just like I said, just walk into my car in freezing cold for 20 minutes was a eye opener for me. I'm like, there are really. I can drive to Orlando right now and find people sleeping on the street because the shelters are not a solution. Some people don't trust the shelters. They feel like they're going to be robbed or something. It's a little different for the what you built, but there are some people that say we don't trust these shelters, and
I mean, it's shelters don't let you do drugs. I'll be really blunt.
well, that's a problem too, right? That's why they stay away from them. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
why they.
Most, I mean, they aren't perfect. I mean, I'm not trying to say like some of the traumas experienced at shelters are real. Every single person who's homeless, like I think I'm an expert in that I've walked a lot of different cities and talked to a lot of addicts. The biggest experts are actually formerly homeless people. It's where I draw a lot of my knowledge is people who have gotten sober are the ones who've told me they needed the 6 months in jail or the 6 months in rehab. It's why I feel some strength of character about who guides me. The people who are guiding me are not necessarily the people who are doing the treatment, because those are the people that believe you should give those people all the time they need. The people who guide me are the people who have been formerly on the street who tell me what a nightmare it is out there.
It's a nightmare out there. That was Kevin. Kevin just texted me, but it's a night. It can be tough out there for a productive family, man, because you have that uncertainty these days. Am I going to be able to pay the mortgage? Am I going to be able to pay the electric? And there, when people keep telling me about how there's this growing chasm of rich and poor, I understand that. There's this really popular Senate candidate. I think his name is like Talaturkey or something. He's a young guy. He's very articulate. He's like, well, there's just he's anti-billionaire. I want people to become billionaires if they can, but there's an old like I think it's Mark Cuban that says it best. It's easy to become a millionaire. It takes luck to become a billionaire. Let's teach people how to become millionaires. Let's teach people how to become successful. Let's teach people how to invest in the billionaires and benefit from their success and grow your wealth that way. Your parents own a great burger chain and your sister runs it. I'm not opposed to that. I would if I was a restaurant owner from all my years of experience in restaurants, it would be burgers and wings. I wouldn't go into a fancy menu with escargot and all. It would be burgers and wings. That's what people love and shakes and and I wish I had the understanding of how to do it when I was young. I probably would have a Coach Trippy's burger joint, but I didn't know how to sign a lease. I didn't know how to buy equipment. I didn't know how to get a loan, so I never did it.
It, you know, we all need mentors. We all need coaches. We all need people who give us a playbook. When you are not blessed with intergenerational wealth and great coaches, it's society's job to try to give you better coaches.
Right.
I struggled with the last candidate to run for Republican governor in Washington. I liked him. His name's Dave Reichert. But like every time Dave spoke, he talked about what a blessing his life was, how there were all these moments where he wasn't going to succeed. He might have gotten a bad grade, but then somebody picked him up. And then, he wasn't going to get to college, but then somebody, because he had the sports ability, kind of got him there. And then, like, he wasn't going to get the gig, then he got it. And, like, I think where Democrats get frustrated with Republicans is they hear those stories and they say, like, yeah, we just want it for everybody, man. We just don't want it just for you, white, awesome Dave Reichert, stud looking sheriff dude. We want it for the Asian woman. We want it for the Jewish guy. We want it for that. But then that's where the Democrats get hurt is they get so focused on identity that they sometimes, I think, get lost on the other side. That our goal is to just help America and the citizens within it live healthy, high quality lives that when you fall on hard times, we don't let you become an addict on the street for years. We get you off, we get you into rehab, we get you into an apartment, and we help you return to society in a positive way. And that has to be the American dream. That has to be where we go. The bus is broken. We are speeding down the railways with two sides of a bus. Everyone's yelling at each other, and they're probably blaming Spider Man in the middle, trying to hold it together because it's his fault. Like it probably is his fault, the person trying to hold it all together. And I mean, we know that person's a villain, but like fuck it, America. Like, let's give it a goddamn try, right? Like
Let's try.
we're here. We're here. We're queer. Donald Trump is president, and we're ready to fix America.
That's what I. When you say mentors, it just goes right back to what I feel is a great. What I feel could be a great point in time is that when churches have like church dorm parents, like church parents, teaching kids, like you said, picking them up, helping them with their homework, feeding them a hot meal on a real plate, telling them if you need a place to do your homework because your mom's all coked out in where you're living and you can't even concentrate, stay here and do your homework. If you need a place to stay, I would love to see some of these churches have a debit card to get these kids a room for the night so they have a warm place to sleep at night. Like you said, if it doesn't have to be, we don't have to build shelters. We just have to have some sort of conversion for that night or that week. I mean, there's a lot of solutions out there, and like you said, the Democrats just want these grand, one size fits all solutions. These giant trillion-dollar solutions. And I'm thinking get the community involved, get the churches involved, get the teachers involved, get the schools involved. Let's teach people how to succeed again.
I think we should end it on this because I got to run and my phone's going to die. It's a public private partnership, America. The government is not going to solve it.
Yeah.
Also, turns out Apple is not going to solve it. It is some great combination of individuals that work for Apple and individuals that work for the government coming together using our shared zeitgeist of knowledge and love of country and space and desire to make it better that will probably advance it forward. And like my grandfather always said, the people in the private industry, they need to make a profit. But the other thing that people in the private industry need to remember, and this is kind of where the government, I think, has a role to kind of be that moral compass, is we do need to take care of our employees. We do need to give back to our community. But we can't, this is where the government struggles. We can't give back to our community in a wasteful way. If
No.
I waste the money that I've taken from the private industry and give back to our community in a shitty way, we actually haven't made it better. And so just, again, my name's Saul Spady. You can find me on Instagram. I want to interact with everybody. And we're building up to this, Coach Trippy. It's going to be really funny. But when I finally announce, like, I swear if things work, some of these podcasts will go viral because we're seeding some conversation that I think America needs to see. And that's why we take the egg on the face because maybe we want to make an omelet.
Yeah, absolutely. Saul Spady, political no-brainer. People are full of information and yearning for wisdom. And if you want wisdom, just listen to the two of us because I'm an old guy, he's a young guy, but sharing this moment together, we share a lot of wisdom, a lot of good stuff.
And it always starts out just reach out, get a cup of coffee with either of us. Like it's
Yeah.
be bold, ask questions, and like I said, whether you're the person who's listening to this because you're inspired by me, or you're the person listening to this because you're trying to get me with my pants down and catch me for saying something funny. Let's just make America better and
I
work together.
agree. And don't forget, send anybody my way. Anybody you want to interview with, send them my way. We'll do three people on one call. So Saul
Let's do
Spady,
it.
let's do this. Thank you so much. Thank you for being so generous with your time. I know you got to get going, buddy. And this is Political No Brainer, a podcast where we move past winner takes all politics and into real conversation.
Hey, let's go Seahawks.
Let's go Seahawks next year, baby. See ya. Thanks all.
I see you, Coach Triffy.